The James Show Podcast.
Welcome to the big show. I am your host, James Parker. Yeah, history may be remembering this day, or at least this sequence of events, for a long time, because I'm still cautiously optimistic about whether or not this new peace deal that was announced by Trump at the end of last week is going to hold up. Now, the first major hurdle has been accomplished. All of the hostages who are still alive, that means all the bodies haven't been returned, but all the hostages that are still alive have been returned. And that was the first, if you're looking for reasons to be skeptical, that was the first hurdle we were have to jump. We finished that, and we finished it early, because the timetable for that was by the end of Monday or Tuesday, we should have all the hostages back. Well, I'm barely waking up this morning, and I'm getting the news. And I realize they're 9, 10, 11 hours ahead of us over there. So let's just jump right into it. First, this morning, Trump spoke in front of the Knesset. That's the Congress. That's what Israel calls its parliament. And first point of order here, before we get into the content of what he actually said, the Knesset has a horn section. It was kind of cool. It's got, I guess it was a couple of trumpets over there, but in addition to the clapping, you hear the horns? So that's pretty cool, right? It's like in the Robin Hood cartoon version of Robin Hood when the King Richard comes back and there's the horns and whatnot. Can we get a horn section? Can our Congress? We can do a horns. We have plenty of extra trumpet players laying around, right? Maybe we throw in a trombone there. Maybe when a ska band's not touring, their horn section could just go out there and crank out some intros when presidents are walking up or whoever it is. But I was thinking maybe a drum line. Maybe we'd do a drum line in there. And, of course, we all saw a good drum line at homecoming on Friday. It just whatever high school's closest by, just bring in a few snares and a couple of bass drums. Maybe the guy that plays the quads there. Of course, if we combine them, the horn section and the drum line, then we'd have the old New Orleans style brass band. And another thing that they won't show you on the news, but I thought you'd be interested in seeing, just because we have a little bit more time to chat, is before Trump got to speak, he was sitting on the side, and they came up, and they're saying a whole bunch of stuff in Hebrew, and there's a translator over it, so the audio's sloppy. But at this one point, after the majority leader spoke, the opposition leader got a chance to speak, and Trump just walked up to the podium to introduce him, to call him up, and then go sit back down. But just having him, and this is the first time he was on the mic there, they broke out into Trump chants in the Knesset.
The president. Where?
So, the View will tell you, and MSNBC will tell you, everybody hates this guy. They're laughing at us. We're a laughing stock on stage. Everyone thinks he's a buffoon. Everyone knows it. I know it. You know it. Everyone hates him. No, they don't. But, okay, now to get into the actual meat and potatoes here. He opened the speech with a reference not just to God and not to Christianity or Judaism, but he said it in a way that connects us both in the Old Testament.
Gather on a day of profound joy, of soaring hope, of renewed faith, and above all, a day to give our deepest thanks to the Almighty God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
So that's a very unifying statement, because he doesn't wuss out and say, just the ethereal concept of God, and he doesn't say specifically Christianity or Jews, because the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is also the God that the Muslims believe in. Now they call him Allah, but the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who's Ishmael's dad? Oh, that's right, Abraham. So same God. So you do know that there are Muslim Arabs in the Knesset. So he's not speaking to Jewish people. He's not speaking to Christians. He's speaking to a combination of the three for the most part. I don't know. I imagine they might have some secular people in there. And so I guess the only people he's leaving out is the godless atheist. And you know what? Some people will go to their synagogue. Some people will go to their church. Some people will go to their mosque. If you're an atheist, you can just go stand in an empty room, stare at the wall if you want. But for the people who were religious, that was a very unifying statement. And also decidedly not secular for the leader of the free world. And then he's imagining here with this peace deal, you got Iran settled down. You got a bunch of people staring at the Houthis really hard. So I don't know if they're going to be flaring up anymore. And that broader region, we've kind of calmed down what was going on between the Armenians and Azerbaijanis and the Syrian guy got overthrown last year, and so we're looking for that place to be a little more peaceful. And you add in this peace that's kind of brokered between Israel and Gaza, and really Egypt's a big part of this too. This was being signed in Egypt later today. He's imagining a new age of peace in the Middle East.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death, and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
So, as it stands now, all 20 living hostages are now free under this plan between Gaza and Israel that was brokered by Trump. Will it last? Do you think it can last? Are you really expecting there to be a new age of peace in the Middle East? Are you cautiously optimistic? Also, a historic event happened this morning. Trump was speaking in front of the Knesset, that is the parliamentary body over Israel. I was playing a couple of clips earlier of the actual content of the speech, but here's the part where he's talking about one of the guys that helped him negotiate the deal, Witkoff, and a heckler stands up, and you don't hear the audio, and Trump really doesn't pay attention to him, but for like a split second before the security guys are out there taking this guy out. And when they took the one member of the Knesset that was fussing, and they took him out, there's another guy that was on the back row that he didn't seem like he was doing anything. He had some books like stacked in front of him, like that's kind of suspicious. But they were like, "You're just out of here too." I think that maybe they were in cahoots, or they're just known buddies, or like Tango and Cash or something to that effect. But there's like two guys that got kicked out, and I think only one of them was making a fuss. But security has none of it, or I say security, the parliamentarians. These are guys in suits, so it doesn't look like the mall cops dragging them off on a Segway. But the audio is hilarious because you hear Trump, and I don't edit any of this. This is exactly how long it took, and it's way faster than happens in our Congress.
Everybody loves Steve, and they respect him, and they somehow can relate to him. I've known him for many years, and I've seen it over and over again.
להוציא את חבר הכנסת עודה, להוציא אותו מהאולם, להוציא אותו מיד, החוצה.
Please expel this Knesset member. Please expel this Knesset member.
להוציא גם את חבר הכנסת כסיף. להוציא את חבר הכנסת כסיף מהאולם.
Expel Knesset member Kasif out of the hall. Please expel him immediately.
There's a Trump chance, and I like the translator. Please expel the Knesset member, whatever his name is.
Sorry for that, Mr. President.
That was very efficient.
Yeah, it's hilarious. All right. So as it stands, since then, Trump flew down to Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, where he and a couple other world leaders signed it. And I say a couple, three other world leaders signed it to make it official for the Israel-Gaza peace deal. Then he spoke for a second in front of a table that says 2025 in big letters that were lit up next to it. I watched that whole thing. That's worthless. You don't need to go back and watch that if you see it on YouTube. And then there was another press conference where him and a handful of world leaders, Israel, Hamas, Egypt, there's a few other guys that were there. They gave us a press availability with a couple of questions answered. I watched all that. That was kind of boring too. The part that stands as of right now, though, cautious optimism still reigns here on the James Show. My skepticism it comes from a lifetime of experience and realizing that even before I was born, this is a part of the world that's had a hard time getting along. And so if you were skeptical about this, you should be. If Trump does this, it's something that no one's done in a long time. I kind of bristle at the idea that, well, they've been constantly at war for 3,000 years. Well, no, they haven't. There were long stretches of peace. There were times when they weren't at each other's throats. There were times when they were living in a more pluralistic society where, hey, you have a different religion, but whatever, you want to do business? So it hasn't really been that bad the entire time. And I'm not even convinced that the Palestinians and the Philistines from the Old Testament are even the same people. So let's put all the hyperbole aside and just recognize, I don't know, that since at least a little bit before World War II, when we're trying to resettle that thing and get it all stretched out, I guess, I mean, what do you blame? World War I is when the new heat started, that we haven't seen this. So at least 100 years. This is a peace that has been 100 years in the making. And if it stands, this is Nobel Prize worthy stuff. I mean, what is the Nobel Peace Prize invented for, if not for resolving conflicts like this long-standing, devastating, high-profile, high-emotion, high-stakes conflicts? This is one of the top. I'm also enjoying this because this is going to make some of the right people quite upset. On Friday's show, it's the weirdest thing I get feedback on. I got a lot of feedback, and I know you didn't hear it because I played it in the last hour of the show, so there's the less than 20% chance you heard this. There was a video going around that went viral of some lady cackling and enjoying the fact that Trump didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize this year. Dude, we hadn't even got the hostages back. They just announced it last, Thursday or whatever, and, some Latino woman from Venezuela won it. But can we check back in? Can somebody find who this woman is? And let's check back in on her in about a year or so. Because if Trump ever does win the Nobel Prize, what's going to happen to this woman? She's going to freak.
Good morning, Donald. Thought I would check in again. Since you didn't win the Nobel Peace Prize. I tried to tell you, Donald. The world is not a fan. Norway is not a fan. This made my weekend. What a way to start out a Friday. The White House is upset. Did they really think you were gonna win? And you lost to a Latino woman. That makes it even better.
Man, what is that? Is that genuine? Is she like the Wicked Witch of the Northwest or something? Like one of the stepsisters from Wizard of Oz or something? Because it also sounded manufactured. Like that, what she was saying wasn't really funny. Even if you hate Trump, that's not something you would laugh at for 30 seconds, like Skeletor at the end of a He-Man episode when they're about to go to break. But you know what? I recognize that same energy. That was the same kind of like fake cackle laugh, like pretending to be amused just for sort of internet clout because you're dunking on Trump. Do you remember the lady that made that smarmy election prediction on the day of the election saying Kamala would win, and she smarted off to some other guy in the grocery store? Same energy.
Okay, so we're closing in on almost 5 p.m. Eastern time, and I've been tracking everything that's been going on across the country today. And my most important encounter was when I went out to get my champagne. I was talking to the guy in the store, of course, asking him, did he vote? And he said he did early voting, and he asked me if I early voted. And he asked me, why I was getting the champagne. And I said, because I'm going to be toasting Madam President tonight. And he just looked at me with kind of like a smirk on his face. And I said, she's going to win this, right? And he says, oh, well, it's very, very close. And I said, no, it's not. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, no, it's not. The women of America are making their voices heard. Reproductive rights is what it all comes down to. And the women are voting in numbers relative to men that are unbelievable. She's won this. And I said to him, she's going to take every one of the swing states plus Iowa. And he said, oh, but the numbers are so close. I said, I'm a political analyst. I'm telling you right now, the numbers are there. She's taking this election. And then I said to him, you realize, and he didn't tell me who he voted for, but of course I knew. And I said, you do realize you wasted your vote, right? And I didn't care. And I walked out with my bottle of champagne and happily walked home. Bye-bye.
See, same energy, don't you think? Columbus Day is worthy of celebration, and far more so than Indigenous Peoples Day. That's not a slight to Indigenous people, but they didn't go embark on the voyages that discovered the New World and connected the two pieces of humanity that had been disparate since the last ice age. Like, these were one of the most consequential voyages in human history. Opened up the age of exploration, opened up the colonization of the West. Yeah, worthy to be remembered. However, there's the history you were taught. There's the history that is the revised version that you're hearing now. And then there's actually the truth, where it's better than you would even know from what you were taught in your textbooks. But first, let's get let's do this in reverse order. Kamala Harris on Columbus Day in 2021, just absolutely trashing it.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
I got it. Europeans are evil. So you've been taught that that Christopher Columbus sailed west looking for new trade routes. So I don't know, they could trade spices with the Indies or something. Now, it gives you a specifically almost profit motive. Almost says in the, hey, you know, this horrible thing that happened, it was driven by evil greed and by white supremacy, and he thought he was better than other people, and he wanted... That's not what it was at all. Did you know the real story of why Christopher Columbus took these journeys actually has a Christian motivation? This is Burton Folsom. He's a professor at Hillsdale College. This was a symposium he was given on bias in textbooks. This happened back in 2007. I've just been in talk radio for a real long time and remembered it. But he's talking about how in the second most popular textbook in high schools at the time, the version of Christopher Columbus was just that. He was some idiot who had his measurements wrong, so he thought he'd get to China faster by going west, didn't even know the world was there. And he was just some idiot being greedy, trying to make a bunch of money, screwing it up, and ended up enslaving and killing a whole bunch of people. Well, that's not the truth at all. If you go back and you read from his actual personal journals, you get the real story.
So I think Columbus deserves a lot of credit. Maybe for not being an expert, for being misinformed, but still going out and doing the job. When we look at motive, they say he was a man with a mission. He wanted to reach the Orient by sailing west. On the previous page, page 4, you see the standard economic view. For example, the trade of spices. They talk about the trade of spices with China, that there were going to be profits to be made in international trade. For some of you, how many that was kind of a standard way that perhaps you studied Columbus in a history class? I see quite a few hands. It was the way I did as well. One thing that's interesting, and be on the lookout for this in textbooks, because often they will print original sources, what historians call primary sources. And these original sources are popped in the textbook, and sometimes they tell a very different story. For example, we have an original source where Columbus tells why he did what he did. And that's on page 7. Shauna Peterson from UCLA is going to read this. Turn to page 7 and look at those bottom, say, 6 lines in that primary source section there that is at the top of the page. Shauna, thank you. Would you read that where it says, "And I say that"?
And I say that your highnesses must not allow any stranger except Catholic Christians to trade here or set foot here. For this was the Alpha and the Omega of the enterprise, that it should be for the increase and glory of the Christian religion, and that no one should come to these parts who was not a good Christian.
Okay, thank you, Shauna. Whoa, there you get a rather different view of Columbus's motive. Columbus says, now we could call him politically incorrect and narrow-minded, only Catholic Christians, but he's saying this is the alpha and omega of the enterprise for the Christian religion, and that no one should come here who's not a good Christian. If we look further, we'll find that Columbus appealed to Ferdinand and Isabella because Ferdinand and Isabella had just recently removed the Muslims from Spain. And they'd been there for 700 years, and they wanted to give thanks to God for helping to get all the Muslim elements out of Spain. And so one of the ways of giving thanks to God was to spread the gospel to another part of the world, and that's where Columbus came in and said, let's spread the Christian message to a part of the world that has not heard it. Now, granted, Columbus was confused on the size of the earth, and he thought he had hit China and this sort of thing, but he did hit people who had not heard the gospel. And so the gospel message was able to be spread to the New World, and Columbus was able to get that process started. So what we have then, if we look at motives, is a Christian motive for Columbus. Yet if you look at the professors, the experts, they're saying he wanted, Columbus was, on page 5, a man with a mission. He wanted to reach the Orient by sailing west. Very interesting, isn't it? No acknowledgement. The Christian origins are ignored.
One thing that gets left out of the history books is he said for himself in his own personal journals that the inspiration, the motivation for his journey was purely a Christian motive. And, of course, that's going to get erased in history books because they don't want the general public, especially public school kids, to know that Christianity could be a force for good at any point in history, even though the greatest explorations and discoveries have been made from a Christian inspiration, the greatest works of arts like the Sistine Chapel, Christian inspiration. No, it's a pattern that you've recognized long ago. But The Sopranos, you remember that show from HBO about 25 years ago? They were big fans of Columbus Day. And, you know, if you're not familiar with the show, it's some mafia guys in New Jersey. People don't know that show, Garrett. There's a lot of people who don't know that show. You didn't know Sly Fox, Let's Go All the Way. You've probably never seen an episode of Silverhawks or Thundercats, so I don't want to hear it, Garrett. You haven't seen Silverhawks. All right, anyway, here's the Sopranos. They're outside, and one of their friends is actually from Italy, and you can tell he chimes in because he has the accent. This is them talking Columbus Day.
New Jersey Council of Indian Affairs has announced plans to disrupt Monday's Columbus Day parade in Newark. Council Chairman Del Redclay, professor of cultural anthropology,
Stop blowing your nose. I want to hear this.
Council members and supporters will lie down in the path of Columbus Day marches, quote, in protest of Columbus's role in the genocide of America's native peoples, unquote. To launch their protest, the Native Americans and their sympathizers plan to begin a death watch tomorrow over the statue of Columbus in Christopher Columbus Park.
Some bad mouth in America, especially now.
I thought Columbus was the hero of America.
Oh, see, it's these Indians and the commie. They want to paint Columbus as a slave trader instead of an explorer.
You gotta admit, they did get massacred, the Indians.
It's not like we didn't give them a bunch of to make up for that.
Land, reservations.
And now they got the casinos.
We ever get we didn't have to work our off for? I won't mind sitting on my ass all day, smoking mushrooms and collecting government checks.
You know what it is? I'll tell you what it is. It's anti-Italian discrimination. Columbus Day is a day of Italian pride. It's our holiday, and they want to take it away.
Damn. But I never liked Columbus. In Napoli, a lot of people are not so happy for Columbus, because he was from Genova.
What's the problem with Genoa?
The north of Italy always have the money and the power. They punish the south since hundreds of years. Even today, they put up their nose at us like we're peasants. I hate the north.
You should take it easy.
All right, now that's really cool because this is the show that was trying to show you how dumb and knuckleheaded their main characters are, and then Furio, the immigrant guy, the one that's actually from Italy, just threw all of their preconceived assumptions into the toilet there. They thought that there was some kind of unity because they're Italian, he's Italian, so naturally they were supposed to like him. But Furio shows you the nuance and the complexities. You know, if he's a northerner, I guess that'd be like us versus a Yankee, like someone from, dare I say, New York City.
New York City.
So they had really strong opinions, but did they really know what they were talking about? And then there's another scene in The Sopranos where Junior's working on his homework. Not Junior, but the main character's son is working on his homework. And Gandolfini comes in there and tries to correct him here, but it's not quite right.
We're having a discussion about Christopher Columbus. His history teacher, Mr. Cushman, is teaching your son that if Columbus was alive today, he would go on trial for crimes against humanity like Milosevic in, Europe.
Your teacher said that.
It's not just my teacher. It's the truth. It's in my history book.
So you finally read a book and it's bull. Look, you had to walk in Columbus's shoes to see what he went through. People thought the world was flat, for crying out loud.
Who cares? It's what he did.
He discovered America is what he did. He was a brave Italian explorer. And in this house, Christopher Columbus is a hero. End of story.
That's funny because no one thought the world was flat. But again, ill-informed, but very strong opinions. We had a statement from the fake Donald Trump. I'll say this again. This was a bit, y'all, and I know it's an impersonator. But the fake Trump gave his thoughts on Columbus Day.
This is your favorite president, or as they call me, Chief Golden Eagle, and I wanted to wish you a very happy Columbus Day. I knew Christopher Columbus very well. He was a great friend of mine. I called him Chris, and he did a tremendous job. But the radical left-wing crazy Democrats want to call it Indigenous Peoples Day, and I get along very well with the indigenous people. They love me. They call me Chief Golden Eagle. They say, Chief, what are we going to do about these crazy radical left-wing Democrats like Lion Liz Warren? I call her Pocahontas. Chief Spitting Bull. She's a horrible person and a loser, and the only woman who has ever failed a DNA test. Nobody ever thought that was possible, but she failed a DNA test. What a disgrace. Jiggly Belly Pritzker. I call him Chief Eats Too Much. Chief Broken Scale. Every scale he steps on says, ouch, you're hurting me. Please get off. He's a huge guy. He keeps stuffing his face. He's a huge guy and a stupid guy. And Peso Store Obama, right? You look at him in his sombrero. El Hakimo, Chief Tiny Teepee. He has a very small teepee. I have a huge teepee. Everybody knows about it. But we are sending out an executive order via smoke signal commemorating today as Columbus Day. We're making it Columbus Day again, celebrating my tremendous friend, Christopher Columbus, and all of his incredible achievements. So happy Columbus Day. God bless you. God bless America. And thank you for your attention to this matter.
All right, that was the fake Donald Trump. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.